What you're about to see is a courtroom confrontation for the history books, an explosive collision of political entitlement and unshakable judicial authority. When Victoria Vicky Romano, the wife of Providence's mayor, strode into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, she thought her husband's office made her untouchable. She was about to make the colossal mistake of threatening a sitting judge, and what followed didn't just humiliate her, it toppled her arrogance, shattered her husband's political standing, and sparked one of the most infamous corruption scandals in Providence history. This isn't just a story about one mayor's wife. It's a stark lesson in what happens when political privilege meets the law, when someone assumes their spouse's elected position grants unlimited power, and when threatening a judge becomes the fastest way to obliterate everything a political career has built. But first, a quick reality check. Fewer than 1% of you watching are subscribed. Hit that subscribe button. This story of political corruption and judicial reckoning is one everyone needs to see. It proves no office, no matter how high, is above the law. It's a crisp Wednesday morning in March. Providence Municipal Court is humming along, dealing with its usual stream of traffic tickets and minor infractions. Outside, early spring air hints at renewal, but inside the courtroom, the tension is about to spike. At precisely 10:30 a.m., the doors swing open. Enter Victoria Vicky Romano, 45, the mayor's wife, striding in with a kind of confidence born from years of believing political connections grant immunity. She's dressed head to toe in designer finery that could pay a month's rent for most, and her jewelry sparkles as if daring anyone to challenge her. Every step radiates the arrogance of someone who's never been told no by anyone who matters. Vicky is here for a parking citation. 3 weeks earlier, she left her car in a fire lane outside a swanky waterfront bistro during a $1,000 per plate fundraiser for her husband's re-election campaign. The fine? A standard $209 plus court costs. But Vicky isn't here to pay. She believes her status exempts her from petty municipal rules. What she doesn't know is that she's about to face a judge who has spent 35 years refusing to bend for political pressure. A judge with zero tolerance for anyone who mistakes a family connection for a free pass. As she approaches the defendant's stand, her posture sets the tone. Confrontational, impatient, checking her luxury watch like her time is far too valuable for this proceeding. Every gesture screams superiority. The clerk announces her arrival, but Vicky barely waits. Her presence alone signals, "I matter here." Judge Caprio looks up from his paperwork, eyes sharp, seasoned by decades of witnessing every form of political arrogance imaginable, including spouses who confuse marital ties with legal immunity. "Mrs. Romano," he begins, his voice steady and authoritative, honed by 35 years of judicial independence. "You are charged with parking in a designated fire lane in violation of City Ordinance 15-28. This violation occurred on March 2nd at 7:45 p.m. outside the waterfront bistro. How do you plead?" Vicky's response immediately transforms the room. Her voice is laced with condescension, barely hiding irritation. "Your Honor," she says, "I plead not guilty." This citation reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of the practical realities of municipal governance and the operation necessities of political leadership. Caprio sets down his pen, a warning sign for anyone who believes they can lecture him. "Mrs. Romano, were you attending a municipal function or conducting official city business at the time of the violation?" "Your Honor, I was attending a political fundraiser for my husband's re-election campaign. As the mayor's wife, my attendance is essential for effective municipal leadership and community engagement." The courtroom falls silent. She's just argued that a campaign fundraiser exempts her from fire safety regulations. "Mrs. Romano, do you hold any elected office or official position with the City of Providence?" Vicky visibly bristles, realizing the question cuts to the heart of her actual authority. "Your Honor, as the mayor's wife, I serve in an unofficial but vital capacity, supporting municipal governance and representing the city at important community events." Vicky finishes, her tone implying that she's imparting wisdom rather than answering a question. Judge Caprio's face remains calm, unreadable, but seasoned courtroom observers know the subtle signs. This is a look at a judge about to deliver a masterclass in civic reality versus political fantasy. "Mrs. Romano," he begins, measured and unwavering, Can you cite the specific municipal code or state statute that exempt a mayor's spouse from fire safety regulations? Vicky freezes, caught off guard. She hadn't expected a municipal court judge to actually challenge her on legal details. Your Honor, she replies, trying to regain composure. I think you're missing the bigger picture of how municipal leadership actually functions in practice. The courtroom goes silent, dead silent. She's just implied that the judge doesn't understand how city government works, and she's far from done making her biggest political blunder. Your Honor, she continues, now speaking as if, Your Honor, she says, voice firm, dripping with entitlement. I think you need to consider the practical implications here. My husband is the mayor of this city. He appoints members to municipal boards and commissions. The city's budget impacts court funding. I suggest you think carefully about how you handle this case. The words hang in the air like a thunderclap. Vicky has just threatened a sitting judge with political retaliation, a move so reckless it about to not only shatter her husband's political career, but ignite the largest corruption scandal Providence has ever seen. Judge Caprio's next move will What happens next systematically dismantles Vicky Romano's political arrogance and puts her husband's entire career in jeopardy. Judge Caprio slowly rises from the bench, an unusual gesture that signals something monumental is about to unfold. With deliberate precision, he removes his glasses and fixes Vicky with a calm, measured stare, the kind of look that announces, You are about to learn a hard lesson about power and law. Mrs. Romano, he says, his voice controlled but carrying the full weight of judicial authority. Did you just threaten this court with political retaliation? Vicky, still mistaking hesitation for uncertainty, doubles down. Your Honor, I merely point out the realities of municipal governance. Political leaders have responsibilities and relationships that extend beyond individual court cases. Caprio nods slowly, as if mentally cataloging every word. I see. Mrs. Romano, since you have threatened this court and questioned my understanding of municipal authority, let me explain how our system of government really works. He moves to the stack of constitutional law books on his desk, every step deliberate. You mentioned your husband appoints members to municipal boards. Are you familiar with the constitutional principle of separation of powers and judicial independence? Vicky hesitates. The courtroom watches as her confident facade begins to crack. Your Honor, I understand that political leadership requires cooperation between branches of government. That's not what I asked, Caprio interrupts, his voice gaining force. Are you familiar with the constitutional requirement that the judicial branch remain independent of political pressure and intimidation? Vicky falters. The woman who had walked in thinking she could lecture the court is now facing a masterclass in law. She cannot escape. Your Honor, I never intended to threaten anyone. Judge Caprio's voice hardens. Threatening a judge with political retaliation is not just inappropriate. It's potentially criminal. It's called judicial intimidation, and it's a felony under Rhode Island law. The arrogance drains from her face. She is finally aware that she may have just committed a serious crime on record. And Mrs. Romano, Caprio continues, you implied I don't understand municipal governance. Let me clarify. I have practiced municipal law for 45 years, served on this bench for 35, and worked with 12 different mayors, including your husband. I understand municipal authority far better than those who assume a spouse's election makes them experts. But he isn't finished. From his desk, he pulls a thick file. Since you threatened this court and claimed political authority, I reviewed your parking and traffic violations. Vicky's face pales. She hadn't anticipated this. According to city records, you received 11 parking violations in the past 2 years. How many of these did you pay? Your Honor, I'm not sure the exact number, she stammers. I'll help you, Caprio says, voice slicing through the courtroom. 0. 11 unpaid citations, totaling $2,200 in fines and penalties. And furthermore, city parking enforcement has documented 17 occasions where you used political influence to avoid accountability, including twice telling officers, Do you know who my husband is? This ticket will disappear. Vicky's political bravado evaporates, replaced by genuine terror. Your Honor, those incidents were misunderstandings. Threatening parking officers with political retaliation is not a misunderstanding. Caprio says, each word deliberate. It's abuse of political power. And now, you threaten the sitting judge with the same corrupt tactics. He leans forward, voice rising with authority. You suggested your husband's position grants you special privileges. You threaten this court. You have demonstrated a pattern of political intimidation to avoid accountability. Then comes a courtroom bombshell. Mrs. Romano, not only am I finding you guilty of the fire lane violation and imposing a full $200 fine plus court costs, I am holding you in contempt of court for threatening judicial independence. Vicky's mouth drops open, but Caprio presses on. Furthermore, I am directing court administration to forward a complete transcript of today's proceedings to the Rhode Island Attorney General's office for investigation of judicial intimidation, political corruption, and abuse of public trust. I am referring this matter to the Providence City Council Ethics Committee and recommending a full investigation into Mayor Romano's administration regarding systematic abuse of political power by family members. Vicky's knees threaten to buckle under the weight of reality. Your Honor, you can't destroy my husband's career over a parking ticket. Mrs. Romano, Caprio responds, his voice calm but final. You did not destroy his career. I did not. You destroyed the moment you threatened the sitting judge while demonstrating a pattern of political corruption that reflected directly on his administration. Judge Caprio stepped closer to the defendant's stand, every inch of his presence radiating constitutional authority. Mrs. Romano, he said, his voice calm yet unyielding. Let me share a lesson about political power and judicial independence. I've served under 12 mayors during my 35 years on this bench. I've seen political families rise and fall. I've watched those who believe themselves untouchable learn, in this very courtroom, that the Constitution matters far more than campaign contributions. His tone softened slightly, like a civics professor addressing a student failing the lessons of history. Your husband holds office at the pleasure of the voters, not this court. But when political families use intimidation, threats, and corruption to escape accountability, they undermine the very democracy that put them in power. Vicky stood frozen, her earlier swagger completely shattered. You walked into my courtroom today thinking your husband's office could shield you from the law. Caprio continued. Instead, you've shown exactly why political corruption is dangerous and why judicial independence is the backbone of constitutional government. Returning to his bench, he prepared to deliver his final judgment. A mayor's wife who threatens judges mirrors a political family that threatens citizens. A politician whose spouse believes laws don't apply to them is one who views democracy as a tool for personal gain rather than public service. He picked up his gavel. Mrs. Romano, your fire lane violation fine is $200. Your contempt of court citation carries an additional $500 penalty and 40 hours of community service. Most importantly, you will explain to the Attorney General, the Ethics Committee, and the voters why a sitting judge found your conduct both corrupt and threatening to democratic governance. Vicky's voice barely rose above a whisper. Your Honor, please. I'm not finished, Caprio said. You mentioned that your husband's position affects court funding and municipal appointments. Let me tell you what truly affects judicial independence. The Constitution, the rule of law, and the principle that no political office grants immunity from legal accountability. The judge swept his gaze across the packed courtroom, where political reporters had come expecting a routine traffic case. Let this serve as a lesson to every political family. Your office is a privilege granted by the people, not a license to threaten judges, flout laws, or corrupt the system that gave you power. When political families act as though they are above the law, democracy itself is endangered. He returned his eyes to Vicky, who now stood with her head bowed, utterly humiliated. Mrs. Romano, I strongly recommend that you and your husband reflect on the difference between public service and personal privilege, political leadership and political corruption, representing the people and exploiting them. He brought down his gavel. Court was adjourned, but the story didn't end there. In the following hours, the repercussions unfolded with lightning speed. Vicky remained at the defendant table, staring at the citation that had cost her $700 and potentially her husband's political future. 15 years of political privilege have been dismantled by a 76-year-old judge who knew democracy only works when everyone, no exceptions, abides by the law. Political reporter Sarah Chun, who had witnessed the drama firsthand, spoke to her colleagues. "I've covered Providence politics for 20 years," she told Channel 12 News. "I've never seen anything like this." A sitting judge just documented a pattern of political corruption by the mayor's family in open court. As Vicky exited the courthouse, cameras followed, her phone buzzing nonstop with messages from advisors, campaign staff, and party officials who had watched the live stream. The video of her political humiliation went viral, racking up over 5 million views within 48 hours. Analysts hailed Judge Caprio's handling of the case as a textbook example of judicial independence in action, and law schools began using the courtroom exchange to teach the separation of powers. The political fallout was immediate. The Rhode Island Attorney General announced a formal investigation into the Romano administration. The Providence City Council convened an emergency ethics hearing. 3 major local newspapers called for Mayor Romano's resignation. By evening, the mayor held a press conference alongside his wife. "My wife's conduct today does not reflect the values of public service or respect for the law that political leadership requires," he said. He announced he would not seek re-election and would fully cooperate with investigations. The Romano political dynasty, 15 years in the making, collapsed in a single morning because a mayor's wife believed she could intimidate a judge. 6 months later, the Attorney General concluded that the Romano administration had fostered a culture of privilege and legal exemption, extending far beyond parking tickets. Mayor Romano completed his term but emerged politically pariah, unable to gain support for future office. The case became a cautionary tale in political science programs worldwide, when families mistake elected office for immunity, careers, and reputations can be destroyed overnight. Professor Janet Walsh at Brown University would tell her students, "Judge Caprio didn't end Mayor Romano's career to make a political point. He did it to protect democracy from families who think they're above the law." The video of that Wednesday morning remains one of the most watched moments of political accountability ever recorded, shared millions of times, studied globally in law and political science classes. For those who knew Judge Caprio, it was simply another example of what made him exceptional: the ability to defend constitutional principles against political pressure, to educate through justice, and to transform arrogance into accountability. He proved that judicial independence isn't just a legal concept. It's the bedrock that keeps democracy from becoming a playground for political families. In a world where corruption often goes unchecked, Judge Frank Caprio reminded everyone that when judges refuse intimidation, when courts remain independent, and when everyone, including mayors' wives, learns that threatening the law is the fastest way to destroy everything, democracy prevails.